The irony of modern health food cuts deep. We're paying premium prices for what our ancestors threw away. That $12 bag of quinoa at Whole Foods? Your great-grandmother would have called it birdseed. The $8 container of Amaranth? Banned by Spanish conquistadors because it was too powerful. And that fancy $15 Freekeh salad? Born from ancient soldiers burning grain fields by accident. Today on Stellar Eureka, we're exploring 10 forgotten grains that once fed empires, sustained civilizations, and kept our ancestors alive through famines. These aren't trendy superfoods, they're nutritional powerhouses that modern marketing rediscovered and repackaged at prices that would make ancient farmers weep. Let's dig in. Let's start with some math that'll blow your mind. Quinoa cost around $4 per pound in American stores. Bolivian farmers who've grown it for 7,000 years receive about 50 cents per pound. That's an 800% markup for a grain that the Incas called Chisaya Mama, mother of all grains. But here's where it gets wild. This superfood was nearly extinct because Spanish conquistadors systematically destroyed quinoa fields. Francisco Pizarro imposed death penalties for growing it, recognizing that controlling food meant controlling people. This tiny seed survived centuries of suppression in remote Andean villages, only to become NASA's chosen grain for space missions. The irony runs deeper. 140,000 quinoa seeds discovered in Ontario, Canada, dating back 3,000 years, prove quinoa's reach extended far beyond the Andes long before Spanish conquistadors tried to destroy it. Why did NASA choose it? It contains all 9 essential amino acids that human bodies can't produce, making it a complete protein that's botanically related to spinach, not wheat. The supreme irony? Bolivian children now suffer malnutrition because their traditional superfood costs more than their families can afford. It's exported to American health food stores where it's marketed as ancient wisdom rediscovered. What if instant noodles were actually invented 4,000 years ago? Bulgur represents humanity's original instant food. Ancient communities would boil wheat for days in huge communal pots, dry it on Mediterranean rooftops under the sun, then crack it for quick cooking. Add hot water and you had a meal in minutes. This ancient processing method created shelf-stable grain resistant to mold and insects, serving as military rations for Roman armies marching across empires. Even the Bible mentions bulgur. References to arisa, meaning first of the course meal, describe this exact preparation method that fed ancient civilizations. Meanwhile, tabbouleh represents history's first fast food. Just add water to pre-processed grain. The social genius? Traditional communal rooftop drying created communal bonds while producing practical nutrition. Entire villages worked together to process grain for winter survival. The processing method remains virtually unchanged across 4 millennia, yet this ancient convenience food now sells for $3.53 to $6.18 per pound. We're paying premium prices for Stone Age food technology. This grain is so powerful that an entire empire built their civilization around it, then watched Spanish conquistadors burn every field and execute anyone caught growing it. That's Amaranth. This tiny seed represented up to 80% of Aztec caloric intake, powering one of history's most sophisticated civilizations. But Cortez recognized its central role in Aztec religious ceremonies, where edible god statues mixed amaranth with human blood. The Spanish saw this as demonic, ordering every amaranth field burned and imposing death penalties for possession. They understood something modern nutritionists are just rediscovering. Amaranth is extraordinarily powerful. A single plant produces up to 60,000 seeds. It contains 3 times more calcium than other grains and is the only grain source of vitamin C. The name Amaranthus literally means immortal in Greek, prophetic considering its survival story. Hidden in remote Mexican villages for 300 years, It survived Spanish genocide to become a modern superfood. Today, amaranth proteins are being developed for 3D food printing and even computer manufacturing lubricants. What cost your great-grandmother pennies now sells for $8 per pound at health food stores as ancient Aztec superfood. Meet the grain smaller than a poppy seed that fuels the world's greatest marathon runners. Teff is microscopic, literally. Drop it and it disappears, which is why Teff means lost in Amharic. Yet this 5,000-year-old Ethiopian grain provides 2/3 of daily protein for 50 million Ethiopians and is the secret behind legendary Ethiopian distance runners. The Ethiopian government saw what happened with quinoa and said, "Not here." They banned raw teff exports from 2006 to 2019 because they watched Bolivian farmers get priced out of their own food. Their fears were justified. International teff now sells for $8 to $12 per pound, while Ethiopian domestic prices reached crisis levels. The government had to choose between export revenue and feeding their own people. Despite being smaller than a grain of sand, teff delivers nearly double the iron content of quinoa and contains resistant starch that helps manage blood sugar. Ethiopian runners don't just eat teff, they grew up on injera, fermented teff bread that serves as both plate and utensil. It's their cultural foundation turned into our expensive superfood. Here's a grain born from disaster that accidentally changed Middle Eastern cuisine forever. Picture this. It's 2300 BC in ancient Syria. Enemy armies burn your grain stores to starve you out. But when farmers sifted through the ruined wheat, they discovered something magical. The young green kernels were smoky, nutty, and absolutely delicious. Freekeh was born from warfare. This fire-roasted wheat became the foundation of biblical cuisine, sustaining Roman legions and appearing in ancient Egyptian tombs. The accidental discovery process actually preserves more nutrients than conventional harvesting. Modern chefs celebrate Freekeh's smoky complexity created by ancient accident. The fire processing triggers unique chemical reactions impossible to replicate in regular wheat, making warfare responsible for one of history's first gourmet grains. What originated as wartime survival food now appears on restaurant menus as $15 artisanal Freekeh risotto. This burnt grain contains double quinoa's fiber content and appears in biblical texts as the grain Ruth gleaned in Boaz's fields. Meet humanity's original wheat and the last meal of a man frozen in ice for 5,300 years. Einkorn literally means single grain in German, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The first wheat ever domesticated 12,000 years ago. Every major ancient civilization from Egyptian pharaohs to Roman legions lived on grain that's virtually unchanged for millennia. The ultimate proof? Ötzi the Iceman, discovered perfectly preserved in alpine ice, had einkorn in his stomach when he died 5,300 years ago. This frozen evidence shows our ancestors thrived on grain that modern agriculture abandoned. Why did we abandon it? Because einkorn yields only 1/5 of modern wheat production. By 1967, the Turkish government was feeding remaining einkorn supplies to livestock, literally treating humanity's original grain as animal feed. Yet einkorn has only 14 chromosomes compared to modern wheat's 42. This primitive grain contains 50% more protein and 3 to 4 times more antioxidants than the wheat we eat today. Now einkorn sells for premium prices as ancient grain flour. We're paying extra for what we never should have abandoned. According to West African cosmology, the entire universe sprouted from a single Fonio seed. Called Po, seed of the universe, by the Dogon people of Mali, Fonio was traditionally reserved for chiefs and royalty. This 7,000-year-old grain was buried with Egyptian pharaohs for afterlife sustenance and considered too sacred for common consumption. Fonio grows faster than any other cereal, 6 to 8 weeks from seed to harvest. It thrives at the Sahara Desert's edge with only 3 rainfalls annually and quadruples in size when cooked. West African saying, Fonio never embarrasses the cook, because it's virtually foolproof to prepare. But the economics are brutal. Mali farmers receive 39 cents per pound, while Americans pay $12 to $22 per pound, a 3,000% markup that flows to Western companies marketing African superfood back to health-conscious consumers. Colonial powers systematically replaced indigenous superfoods like Fonio with cash crops, creating today's absurd situation where African farmers can't afford their own nutritional heritage. What if I told you China's 4,000-year-old noodles weren't made from wheat, they were made from the grain we feed to birds? That archaeological discovery shattered everything we thought we knew about pasta's origins. Millet was declared one of 5 sacred crops by Chinese Emperor Shen Nung in 2800 BC, older than rice in Chinese cuisine. Yet, in America, we literally call it birdseed, while it sustained Chinese civilization for thousands of years. India's Green Revolution reduced millet from 40% to 20% of food grain production, replacing nutritionally superior indigenous crops with high-input wheat and rice requiring corporate fertilizers and pesticides. The climate change twist? Millet grows in temperatures from 12 to 34 degrees Celsius, survives drought conditions where other crops fail, and stores 10 to 12 years without insect damage. NASA studies millet for space missions while we feed it to birds. The absurdity is complete. Your great-grandmother knew millet as reliable sustenance while we rediscover it at quinoa prices as ancient gluten-free superfood. Enslaved Africans hid sorghum seeds in their hair during their forced journey to America, smuggling African nutrition to American soil. This Ethiopian origin grain fed African civilizations for 8,000 years before enslaved people brought it to sustain southern communities. Your great-grandmother's generation used every part of sorghum, grain for food, stalks for syrup, and brushes for cleaning. Even Benjamin Franklin recognized sorghum's versatility, writing about sorghum brooms in 1757. Yet today, 95% of American sorghum production goes to animal feed and ethanol despite superior human nutrition. The climate disconnect is staggering. Sorghum produces crops with 10 inches annual rainfall, while corn requires 20+ inches. It's perfectly suited for America's climate change future, yet policy favors water-intensive crops over drought-resistant indigenous wisdom. We feed sorghum to livestock while importing expensive quinoa, ignoring the climate-adapted superfood hiding in plain sight. Roman legionnaires conquered the world fueled by grain modern agriculture nearly drove extinct. Spelt built the Roman Empire. Called far by Romans, it featured in religious festivals and elite marriage ceremonies while powering history's most successful military machine. Biblical references span from Exodus through Ezekiel. The processing paradox destroyed Spelt. It requires expensive specialized equipment to remove tough hulls, making it economically inefficient despite superior nutrition. This inefficiency nearly drove Spelt extinct by the 1970s. Ancient Romans knew something we forgot. Spelt contains fragile gluten, potentially easier for sensitive individuals to digest. They are breedings selected for human compatibility over industrial processing, exactly the opposite of modern agriculture. NASA studies Spelt's hardy characteristics for space agriculture, while Spelt chaff creates therapeutic pillows for pain relief. Modern applications reveal ancient wisdom about grain's versatility beyond simple nutrition. We replace the grain that built Rome with varieties designed for machines rather than human health, then pay premium prices for ancient grain flour that should never have been abandoned. 10 grains that sustained civilizations, built empires, and kept our ancestors alive through famines, now marketed back to us as expensive superfoods. Your great-grandmother wasn't eating primitive food. She had access to humanity's nutritional pinnacle, developed over thousands of years of careful cultivation. Which of these forgotten grains surprised you most? The space-age quinoa that nearly went extinct, or the Roman Empire grain we almost fed to livestock? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this journey through forgotten nutrition, hit subscribe for more stories about the wisdom we left behind. This is Stellar Eureka, signing off.